Hey guys, Johnny Broker here in North Carolina. Gary Vee says if you've got free advice or free knowledge, that you should give it away for free, so that you can better serve your clientele and create good content. And I hope that by doing this, when you guys are ready to buy a home, sell your home, start your rental portfolio, flip a home, anything and all real estate needs, that you give me a call first. Today's topic, our first little educational video, is going to be about inspections. Here in North Carolina, we have what's called the due diligence fee and a due diligence period. And during that period is when the buyers are supposed to take care of all their inspections. And it's easy to say, well, we're just going to get the house inspected. But what does that mean? Who's inspecting the house? What are you expecting? How much does it cost? And if you find anything, whose responsibility is it to fix it? So why inspections? Don't wait till after you buy the house to inspect it and find 10, 15, or $20,000 worth of damage or needed repairs that you simply overlooked because you rushed into it or because there was another offer on the table or whatever. I've seen it numerous times, particularly with my investors, that where they're counting every dollar to make sure the deal works, that they go in, they do a visual inspection, if you will. They walk through every house, they look in all the closets, they get in the attic, they get in the basement, and they do this, and everything looks good. They make the offer accordingly, and then when the professional goes in there, they find unbelievable things. Foundation problems, HVAC issues, things that they didn't check. Unbelievably, are the things that don't work. And sometimes utilities aren't available at the time of showings. Whether it's you're seeing the house in the dark or you didn't see the house when it rained. I have people all the time say, "Oh, I don't want to go look at his house because it's raining outside." But that's the best time to go look at a house, when it's just absolutely pouring outside. So who does the inspections? I think it's best that the seller does at least a generalized home inspection before putting the house on the market. It's kind of the same argument for getting your house appraised. Yes, it is the buyer's responsibility to inspect the house. And it's, of course, the buyer's responsibility to pay for the appraisal for their own mortgage, their own lending on the home if they're using uh, a loan to buy it. But if you get the appraisal ahead of time, if you get the inspection ahead of time, you might find some red flags that aren't going to scare that buyer away later. And it could be some really easy fixes. There are some really bad things that come up in inspections that could be very harmful, but are super cheap to fix. So if you're the seller and you're looking to list your house, I recommend, even if it's a recent build or even if it's the home that you've lived in your whole life, there are things that professionals look at and they have tools to get the better view of whatever the issue might be than what you're thinking. So first we'll start with a home inspection. A typical home inspection is like a $300 to $500 deal. I wouldn't waste any time with someone that charges a lot less. There are people out there that will do a home inspection in like 30 minutes for like $50, and I think that's just a waste of time. I think anyone with common sense could probably do that. And if there were any red flags, you could probably just Google that knowledge. But a real home inspector is someone that's typically a licensed contractor, and they're going to go in to the property and they're going to cover it from the basement all the way to climbing up on the roof, weather permitting. And they're not an HVAC specialist, they're not a pest or mold specialist, but they're well versed in everything. And as far as the best bang for your buck, for that few $100s, that guy comes out for several hours, and don't be surprised if you get a 50-page report. That seems to be the norm these days. I used to be blown away when a home inspection was 12 or 15 pages, and now the last several that we've ordered they're 50 or 80 pages. So you're getting ready to spend 50, 100, 200, 300, $400,000. It's typically the biggest investment of your life, something you and your family have saved up for a year or 2 years for the down payment. This is a huge move. It's not a cheap little used car that you want to get rid of or can walk away from. And so in order to get an 50-page report where every room is broke down, where every floor is broke down, where every system is broke down, and you can have that for $400 or whatever your local pro charges, that's by far the best bang for the buck. And then also, the rest of these inspections that I'm getting ready to cover are typically something that you can add on to. So a home inspector can look at something and say, you know what, there's a chance that there could be radon down here. And instead of hiring the radon guy, you could pay that home inspector an additional, a much smaller fee to get him to do the radon test himself. And the same thing with like the lead-based paint. We'll get all that later. So a home inspection is a generalized inspection of everything. He's going to check all the systems. Usually all the utilities are on. He checks the heat. He puts the temperature in the vents to make sure it's hot. He makes sure it gets cold. A good home inspector, if the little light inside the microwave doesn't come on when you open the door, a good home inspector is going to catch that and it's going to make the report. Now that being said, if you're the buyer, don't get overwhelmed by this. Oh my God, I thought it was a perfect home and there's so much wrong with this house. I could never buy it. A lot of times it's very minuscule things that this home inspector is extremely detailed in their work and they're picking up on everything. And so, the light in the microwave, I might make the report, but that's also like a $5 fix you can do yourself. So another great thing about the home inspection is that it's not something that's going to stop the sale or stop you from getting financing on a home or would stop you from moving in on time, but it's a great to-do list down the road. If something's showing signs of wear, or he's able to look at the roof and say, yeah, it looks like it's about halfway through its life and you've got 10 or 15 years on that roof, that's good to know. The average person might look at a roof and say, oh, it looks new, it looks like a good roof, I don't see anything popped up. But the home inspector is going to say it's got 5 years left, it's got 10 years left, it's got 30 years left. And these are things that are just super good to know. You got to kind of think that a home inspection is kind of like a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Yeah. So first, as far as specialists go, is something that I've maybe only seen like 2 or 3 times in my career as a real estate agent, at least here in North Carolina, but a chimney inspection. A lot of people don't think about the chimney. In fact, most people just say, does it work? Is it wood burning or is it gas logs? Does it, and a lot of people don't think that maybe the mortar around the outside of the chimney is cracking or it's seeping air or, creosote inside of a chimney. I don't know if you've ever seen a video of what it looks like when creosote is a byproduct of wood burning. And some woods are way worse than others. There's actually some trees you're not supposed to burn inside your fireplace. But it builds up, or years after years after years, and that buildup is actually flammable. And eventually it can combust. And if you've never seen a video of the creosote chimney finally combusting and burning, it's unbelievable. It looks like a sci-fi movie. And if you haven't seen it, the very next YouTube video you watch, that needs to be what you watch. Typically that inspection's $250. There are certified chimney sweep inspectors that can go in and determine all that. And this is also something that you could pay certain home inspectors an additional fee, like maybe a $50 or $90 fee, and they can take a deeper look into the chimney. That's something that's often overlooked. It's extremely dangerous, can be extremely dangerous. And if there is a buildup, or if you do need a little bit of mortar or whatever to be fixed, that's a cheap fix compared to losing your whole house or possible injury due to a home fire. Next on the list, lead-based paint. We hear a lot about lead-based paint. Most people don't know. I ask people all the time, why is lead-based paint dangerous? And they don't know. They just, does it emit gas? Does it hurt if I rub my hand against it or whatever? And come to find out, lead-based paint could be rolled out on this floor and I could go down there and waller all in it and it would not harm me. Lead-based paint is not harmful to the touch. Lead-based paint is only harmful if you ingest it. The problem with lead-based paint is it tastes sweet. It tastes like sugar. So if you're 2 years old and one day you're teething or whatever and you start chewing on the paneling or the front porch pickets and it tastes like sugar, you're not going to know to stop. And if no one's watching you, you're going to keep doing it. This is why lead-based paint toys from other countries like China is a serious problem. If your little model car is painted with lead-based paint. No one's paying attention. That kid puts that in its mouth. It tastes like sugar. They don't stop sucking on it, and they get poisoned. This happens every year to thousands of families. It's extremely sad, and it's very easy to check for. Any home, lead-based paint became illegal in 1978. So any home built before, like say 1980, there's a chance that it's somewhere in the property. Covering it up with normal paint is a typical fix. You're just going to try to make it to where no one could taste it or ingest it. But you can actually go to your local hardware store, and there's a test kit, and there's like a little fluid that you'll brush on. It looks like a little nail brush on some paint, or you chips away some paint flakes, and depending on what color it turns or how it reacts, it will let you know if it's lead-based paint or not. But there are lead-based paint lab tests that if you hired a certified, technician or specialist, they would actually chip away some of the paint, put it in a vial, and send it off to a lab, and they would verify that. That's like a $300 deal. And again, a home inspector can perform that test. Most of them will offer it for like $50 on top of the home inspection. I highly recommend if it's any home built before 1980, especially if it's one of these older homes, it's a foreclosure or whatever, where it hasn't been updated, like everything's original in 1968 inside the house, it still has shag carpet. If the house has shag carpet, there's probably lead-based paint somewhere in the house. Pest inspection. When people think pest inspections, they think fleas or they think termites. And again, this is something that a good home inspector is not certified or not a specialist in pests, but they can look at wood and they can say, hey Johnny, this looks like termites, you better call a termite guy and verify that. But depending on the moisture in the wood, or if there's tunnel spotted, usually they'll take a screwdriver and see how soft it is. And that's something that's what people think. And obviously termites can present extremely expensive damage. They're usually in basements or crawl spaces where things are wet and hidden and out of sight and out of mind. And then the next thing you know, the foundation or all the floor joists in the house are shot. And if you've never tried to replace, 8 or 10 floor joists in the middle of the living room, it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster, and it's extremely expensive. But the other flip side to pest inspection, and I've actually seen this on a house here locally, is mice. And why mice? Because they chew on wires, they chew and build nests in insulation. Insulation is typically stuck up underneath floors these days, and they'll pull all that insulation down. It's all on the ground. It's a big mess. If it's a crawl space, it's difficult to get under there and redo it, and because it's a hassle, it costs more to do. But then also, a mice infestation is extremely bad because they bring other animals in. So you may not have a snake problem, but if you got a mice problem, eventually you're going to have a snake problem. And that's something that if it's found, it's a cheap inspection, and if it's found, it's usually extremely affordable and cheap to fix. To have a pest guy put out some traps, or to spray for insects, or to put out some to have a termite bond. Termite bonds are often transferable to different owners. And that's extremely affordable, and you're protecting the largest asset in your life, your home. Radon. Sounds sci-fi. Radon. Sounds like it should be, on Star Trek. But that is a natural occurring gas that comes out of the ground, typically where there's a lot of rock. It actually comes out of granite countertops at very, very, very small trace amounts, naturally. If you put granite in your house, you're bringing radon gas into your house. But you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you don't know it's there, can make you extremely sick. In fact, I saw a stat the other day that says up to 20,000 deaths a year here in the United States are related to lung cancers from radon gas. People don't have no idea. And if it's coming from your basement, if it's coming from your crawl space, it's coming up through the house, it raises, and you're breathing it all the time, and you have no idea. You have no idea you got it. But again, it's a cheap test. They monitor air quality. They determine you got a radon problem. You can't get rid of it. It's in the ground. But all it is an exhaust fan, basically. An exhaust fan gets plumbed into your basement or your attic, and they pump the air, and it keeps circulating air from your basement up out of the top of the house and away from the household, and it's fixed. It's cheap. It's a cheap inspection. It's a cheap fix if you need to get it fixed. and could prevent lung cancer. So that's huge. HVAC, that's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. An HVAC specialist, again, that's something that a home inspector is going to do a general inspection of. And if he thinks that there's a problem, he'll say, oh, you got to call your HVAC guy. But an HVAC guy is going to come in and make sure that thermostats are calibrated, which is particularly important if you have multi-floors. So, or different sections of the house are on different units and they're not calibrated to what is actually the air temperature. It could cost you huge money in utility costs down the road. Thermostat calibration, electrical connections, air vents. If, in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of people are talking about sweeping or cleaning out ducting. There's a lot of dust. And anytime that something's getting hot, cold, and then there's dust, you have the chance for mold, which is the next home inspection or inspection that should be considered. So mold is natural, just like radon. It's in the grass, it's in the soil, it's on tree bark. If you like going on long walks through the park, you're surrounded by almost every kind of mold, but it's not in a contained environment. So if you have a moisture issue in your crawl space or your basement or even behind the kitchen sink that leaks a little bit or whatever, and it's contained, you end up breathing and eating and getting attached to, and it attaches to clothes, it attaches to people, attaches to furniture, attaches to your shoes, whatever, and it's around you and you're breathing it. And I've seen where people get extremely sick, like hay fever, really bad, and they go to the doctor and they can't figure out what's wrong with it, and all it was a simple mold test. It's easy to get rid of, especially if you jump on it ahead of time. And the way they would test for that, there's actually units you can leave in the house to do air quality tests, and then they can also scrape off, if there's something that looks kind of funny, they can scrape it off the surface and do a surface test. This is also something that a home inspector can do at a small additional cost, but if you have a mold guy go out and do it, it's a couple $100s. And again, once it's fixed, if you need it, typically it's cheap. Wait too long, put it off, ignore it, it could cost your life. Next one is sewer and septic system inspection. This is pretty common. We used to do them all the time for mortgages. Sometimes they're absolutely required. And basically they're going to go out, find the lid for the septic tank. Hopefully they don't have to dig it up. Maybe they might have to dig a little bit. They find the lid, they pull it off, and they can tell you, where your sludge level is. If the tank is the right size for the house, for the bedroom count. It doesn't really matter how many, everyone will say, oh, there's only one bathroom or there's only 2 bathrooms. It doesn't matter how many bathrooms there are. What matters is how many bedrooms there are. The more people, the more showers, the more bathroom visits. So you need a bigger tank, and they can establish if it needs to be pumped, when's the last time it got pumped, how far away the lines are, if it's too close to the well, and things change. A lot of people like the older homes, but the older homes back in the day, they didn't have a washing machine. And now people have washing machines in all their homes, right? In-unit laundry. And that septic tank that was built back when that house was built in 1950 wasn't built to have a washing machine. And so that's something good to know. If you don't do that inspection, you buy the house and you have septic tank issues, now you're talking about a $10,000, $15,000 repair. Which brings me to the last point I'm going to make real quick on this quick video. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to comment, email me or call me, and I'll be glad to guide you. But who's responsible for the inspections? Buyer. It's the buyer's responsibility to check out the house all the time. Who's responsible for the repairs? That's negotiable. If you do it during your due diligence period, you can present the needed repairs to the seller and say, look, I really need you to fix this, or I really need you to check this out. The home inspector raised flags. Can you get this inspection done? Or, can I get this new appliance? Or can you give me an allowance? Maybe they don't want to do the repair. Like, I don't want to do the HVAC thing. I just want to close, but I'll give you a $5,000 allowance. And that's something that can be negotiated. And it's pretty powerful. And you certainly don't want the bad surprise later on. And after you've moved in and then you're moving everything out to fix a floor joist. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to do many more of these videos down the road. I look forward to it. I look forward to answering your questions. And if you guys have any questions at all or concerns, or rebuttals, give me a call, 336-239-0658. Until then, be good, be safe.